to DAX Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of DAX Machina. In the studio tonight with me is Robbie Rip Rains with his wicked awesome cowboy hat. Naomi Finn from Naomi Finn Storyteller is joining us tonight. We are going to have an awesome time tonight talking about Werewolf Springs. Anthony should be back in with us shortly. He was cooking dinner and had to step away from the computer for a few minutes. Doc will not be joining us tonight, and we may or may not have a Steve sighting depending on whether he can get his computer to get back online. My internet is finally fixed, thank God, because we had to miss Wednesday night show. Had to miss this show for Wednesday night, but we were out for almost 48 hours without internet. I was starting to consider changing my name to Ezekiel and putting on a really big hat and building barns. Felt like the Amish. How y'all doing tonight?
Doing good.
Fantastic, as always.
Robbie, I'm liking that shirt, brother.
Yeah, my partner gave me that from Gatlinburg.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he said, "I got you a present." I said, "Huh?" So he handed it to me. I said, okay." And he said, "No, seriously, He said, "I wouldn't spend $25 on a joke, so at least he spent $25 on the shirt for me. So I feel loved."
Aw, all warm and fuzzy, like you want to cuddle with him.
Yeah, I kind of like the little guy. And I say little guy because when I was graduating the academy, he was 1 year old.
Yeah, I felt like that at the sheriff's department. They didn't. We had DSNs, a department serial number, and they didn't reuse them. And when I left the sheriff's department, they were in like the 14 and 1500s, and mine was 600.
Yeah, we went down to watch our newest guy graduate. His basic number, he was like basic 750 something, whatever it was like that. And they turned and looked at me. They said, "What was your basic number?" I said, 340. Oh, well, there's only 400 classes in between you and him. I'm like, yeah, shut up. I said, he probably wasn't even alive when my class graduated.
That's hilarious. That'll make you feel old before your time, won't it?
Sucks getting old.
What was it Groucho Marx said? If I'd known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself.
Yeah.
I always like that quote.
I second that remark. Or I resemble that remark. That'd be better.
Definitely that one. Well, Miss Naomi, you've been up to some big and awesome things since you left hanging out with us idiots. Tell us a little bit about your channel for those in the chat that aren't familiar with it. And folks, if you are not familiar with Miss Naomi's channel, I'm going to post the link here in just a second, and make sure you guys go over there and show her some love, give her likes and subscribes.
Well, first of all, this feels like coming home. It feels good to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you.
My channel is just what you said. It's about storytelling. I like to tell stories about strange and unusual things. I tend to focus more on folklore. I love... I'm sorry, I had to read what my son said. Anyway.
That's what I was going to do, is highlight what he said.
Yeah, he's already got that. His kids are already pushing him around. Anyway, I like to find places. My biggest love, I think, is to find places like Werewolf Springs. And those are places that have modern day sightings of Bigfoot and Dogmen, and I like to go back to the origins. And of course, it isn't the origins. It's usually the European origins, but I do find those really interesting. The story that was supposed to be released today at 5 o'clock and isn't going to be released till tomorrow because I lost my phone, and I record some of my stuff on my phone, is actually not about any of that. It's going to be about the movie Cannibal Holocaust. So I like to throw some different things into my channel. Of course, I published a book this last fall, and
which is awesome. Congratulations.
thank you. And I'm working on 2 more because I never can work on one thing at a time. And I still work for Mr. Buckner, and that's about what life's been doing for me lately.
Keeping you busy, though.
Oh yeah, about 16 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Well, that's kind of the same with me. I thought when I retired from being a cop, I would not be working near as many hours. But now that I work full time on my books, if I'm not working on the books, I'm working on promotions, or I'm pulling research for a book, or trying to update one of my websites or something. So I keep myself busy. If I'm awake, I'm working on something, basically.
Yeah, it's like YouTube long videos, YouTube short videos, TikTok videos, the podcast. Oh, that's right. I also have a podcast that you can find on most of the streaming services, Spotify, iTunes, Audible. A few I don't know what they're called, but they're there, and they send me money, so I'm good.
Long them checks keep coming in.
That's right. And so between all of those and the writing that I do for myself and the writing I do for others, and and then of course I also have a house to take care of, and groceries to buy, and food to cook, and laundry to do, and at
Gilda
some
to
point,
for it.
every
Sorry,
now
that was
and
a Princess Bride reference.
at some point, I do plan on taking a nap. I'm just not sure when that will be.
Trust me, I understand that completely. Mark Napier wants to know exactly where Werewolf Springs is at.
Werewolf Springs is the closest town I can think to describe, or to nail it to, is Dixon, Tennessee. It's actually sort of between there and White Bluff. I think Burn is also right there, or Burns. It's as far west of Middle Tennessee you can go without actually being in Western Tennessee, and it might actually be in Western Tennessee. It's almost directly south of, might be just a little bit west, but it's if you're heading out of the LBL and you head in this general southerly direction, you'll come to a place called Montgomery Bell State Park, which is a beautiful park named after Montgomery Bell, who was an iron magnate in the 1800s in Tennessee. And the park itself is really well manicured. They have golf course, they have a clubhouse, they have 3 lakes, one of which you can swim in. And then there's the boating and the fishing and the golf, and I already mentioned golf. And the trails are all really, really well maintained. And so it's hard to imagine that a place like this would have such a spooky legend, but it does. And some people still hear things to this day and see things. So
Which
it hasn't
is
stopped.
really awesome.
Yeah.
I want to say real quick, I want to say welcome Forensic Mystics to the channel. Thank you for becoming a member of the YouTube channel, and thank you for being with us tonight. Much appreciated. Werewolf Springs is something I hadn't even heard of until you told me about it, and now I just can't get enough of the place. But one of the things that I read about it is they tried to blame like some of it on allegedly circus animals getting loose, which makes no sense to me whatsoever.
There are so many legends that there's one down in I don't know if it's northern Alabama or southern Tennessee, but there's another one, same exact story. A train, it jumped the tracks. All of the circus animals escaped. They found all of them except. It's the same story, and I read them so often when I'm looking through this stuff.
Because I heard the same thing about the Rougarou down in Louisiana. It seems like back in the 1800s, the circus lost a lot of animals.
Yeah,
a lot of train derailments with just specifically circuses.
I'm pretty sure if I'd been a politician back then, I'd have told the circus, you can't use the railroad tracks anymore.
That's right, you're done. It's like how everything's a bear or a dog attack now.
Yeah, Exactly. But yeah, that is how that started. There, and a lot of people have blamed that on the wild men of Borneo.
Mhm.
They were a pair of brothers who actually did travel with Barnum and Bailey. They weren't. They're buried in, I think, in Ohio or Pennsylvania. I'm not sure which. They were never. I mean, essentially, they were. I believe that they had a mental disability, and I believe at one point they were feral. So they didn't have any social skills, but they were never dangerous to anybody. And they certainly would never have been kept in a cage outside of the time that they spent in the cage when people were coming in and gawking at them. But those two brothers definitely were not the ones at Werewolf Springs. That's definitely out of the question. In fact, a lot of people, if you look at when those tracks came through there, the railroad tracks in that part of Tennessee actually went through as a part of the Confederate effort to create a supply chain for their soldiers and their ammunition and whatnot. And so those tracks were built in the 1860s. And some of the stories about Werewolf Springs goes back farther than that. So if it really did, if it was a case of an animal escape from a train wreck, then that's really amazing because there wasn't even any railroad tracks for that train to wreck on. Or that explains why it wrecked. It was trying to go along and it ran out of tracks. I'm not sure which.
It seems like there was a lot of train derailments during that time, so it was kind of a good fallback for them if they didn't understand something that was that was a train wreck, because
Yeah.
there's so many of them.
Well, and excuse to use, they've got the generic excuses even today. Like,
Yeah.
you heard something screaming at you from the woods. It must have been a fox. No, it didn't sound anything like a fox. Well, then it must have been a wild dog.
Or my personal favorite, oh, that was just a Jake break out on the interstate. And
like I've never heard
40
that
miles from here, but sure.
What you're hearing is a strange acoustic bounce of the raceway that's 300 miles away.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm hearing a racetrack from 300 miles out.
You know that audio that Wayne played for you, was that last night? Yeah. You know, that's the first time I've ever heard anything that even came close to what I heard the night that I had my...
That's some creepy audio.
Yeah. And that's why I've always said... I have troubles identifying foxes. Foxes always, when I hear them, I'm always like, okay, tell me what that is. But I knew what I was listening to that night was not a fox. Yeah. And that is the first time I've ever heard audio that actually sounded like what I heard.
I think a lot of the reason people say fox on a lot of things is because they do have such a wide range of sounds that they make. There is, like a wolf, it's a howl, or a coyote, it's a yip. But foxes just have such a wide range of vocalization that they do. I think
they get a lot louder than you would expect to find a little one that size.
I think that's where a lot of people will, if they hear something that sounds possibly canted, if it's not anything that they know for a fact is another dog, or it's a fox, it's got to be a fox. And it's like you said, it's that scapegoat answer that the train wreck answer of yesteryear, I guess.
And that's the problem. Those answers are all train wrecks because they don't make sense.
My dad had a fox one time, and it would make all kinds of different sounds. But, and like you said, it'll get louder, DA, but it gets to a point, and it's not, that a fox is not making some of these sounds because it doesn't have the lung capacity or the size to, it's like, you can have a bobcat out there, but a bobcat's not going to sound like a lion or a tiger. It just doesn't have the, so.
And, one of the vocalization I heard in the Mark Twain, granted, it was so far away, I couldn't, all you picked up on the audio that I tried to record was just crickets, but we could hear it in the distance. And it sounded like the Ohio howl, the Ohio sounds, and that kind of almost like a siren sound, that roar.
Yeah.
I could hear it, but it was faint, and we were like, shh, hey, shut up. You guys hear that? And when I tried to record it, it just didn't come through. You could hear the fire crackling, you'd hear crickets, but you couldn't hear any of that background. But it was very distant. It was probably, if I had to guess, 6 or 7 miles from us.
Really interesting. I hear strange things out here all the time.
Are you still having something come up to your house at night?
I have strange neighbors. No, I did have something the other night. In fact, so much so that, of course, I work here in the bedroom, and Brad works out in the kitchen. He's taken over my kitchen table, and it got so bad in here that I got up and walked out to the kitchen and sat down with him because the best way I can describe it is first I heard something go down the side of the house, bam, 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 bam. And then I heard, we have walnut trees out here. So we have always got walnuts falling on the house. They fall on the roof and then they kind of roll down the roof and usually bounce into or out of the gutter, whichever the case may be. And it sounded like that, only if the walnut was about the size of a headache ball. And
Really?
it was just like 2 or 3, bam, 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 just like a walnut if it had, caught the edge of the roof, but way louder. And I actually kind of felt that vibrate. And I got up and went out to the kitchen. And I actually was going to, stick my head out the door with the flashlight. Then I remembered I do have a light at this end of the house that wasn't working for a while, but now it is. And I flipped that on and I didn't see anything out there. But it was a weird night. It was a very, very weird night. And that's the first time I've had any real activity in months, I think. So I don't know if I should go out there with the pepper and spray down the house. I don't know that really worked, or if it just thought I was so crazy. It was like, I ain't going near that woman again.
She's trying to pepper me up.
Yeah. So
She's trying to season me.
I'm fixing to get at.
Well, that's kind of what I think. I'm fixing to get at. So, but yeah, that's the only time. And of course, my husband is always, no. And so I didn't push it with him. I never do. I think I froze. No, I didn't. Okay.
No, I think you're good. Little Patty says, are there any other podcasts like Dixie Cryptid that are just stories? I've gathered a lot of them.
Nance with Buckeye Bigfoot has a really great, I love her channel. She's my second favorite to Dixie. And then there's Leslie with Cryptids Canada. She just does Bigfoot and Dogman stories. And let me think, who else? There's
oh man, there's
another
blank on
yeah. I mean, Josh Turner does a lot.
I haven't seen Josh do a show in a while.
Yeah, I think I don't know what the deal is there.
A sabbatical there. I haven't heard anything from him. Elijah Henderson. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely Elijah. Yep.
Yeah, there are a lot of different channels out there.
I think Dark Waters, is he still around? Is he still doing stuff?
Dark Waters is still around. I just did an interview with him about a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Yeah. And
we got Monster Radio.
Yeah.
Got the good folks over at Monster Radio. Sasquatch Odyssey, Paranormal Odyssey. There's a bunch of shows that tell stories and have guests on. So there's more than a dozen of them. I guarantee you that you can find easily.
And of course, there's my channel, but I don't just do Bigfoot and Dogman. I do all kinds of different weird and strange things. So, but you're welcome to stop by because I'll entertain you one way or the other. I'll treat you so many ways you'll have to like some of them. So my mom always said.
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
Well, kind of getting back to the Werewolf Springs thing. Well, the story that always grabbed my attention, and you tell it so well, so I'm going to let you tell it, is the guy and his was a manservant or
I believe
in
possibly a former slave. Yeah, they were headed, I think, from Burns, or Dixon, I'm not sure which, but they were headed over by to their farm, which is just outside of Nashville, or would have been just outside of Nashville at the time. And they were coming home. It was late at night. They were in a wagon, and as they were going along, they began to notice that something was going along with them. They could hear it, and they thought bandits or something. They were about to be robbed. So, of course, the farmer, he kicked up the speed in the wagon. Whatever it was kept up with them. And this thing wasn't on horse. They could tell it was walking, and yet it was able to keep up with the wagon. And of course, he and the servant are getting a little bit more nervous and a little bit more nervous. And so he speeds it up a little bit more, and whatever it is, it keeps up with him. So finally, he decides he's just going to stop and confront whoever's out there. So he stops the wagon and he yells, and nothing. So now he's really weirded out. He takes off at a dead run, and I mean, he's scared, and the servant's scared, and they don't know what to do. And finally, they're totally panicked, totally freaked out. They jump out of the wagon, one way and the other way. Farmer goes into the brush, and he hides under the brush, and the servant takes off running, and whatever it was chased after the servant, and the farmer had to lay there and listen while the servant was basically devoured by this thing. He had to listen to the screaming and the crying and the begging for mercy, and it went on and on until finally, that one bite of the throat, I assume, finally ended it for the servant. But he died a horrible, miserable death.
He was basically eaten alive.
He was eaten alive, and the farmer had to there was nothing he could do. He had no way to defend himself against this thing. He knew if he went to try to save his servant, the same thing would happen to him. So he lay there till daylight, and then when he felt it was finally safe, he went to town. And that leads you. Tell me when you want to hear the next part of that, because that leads into the posse. You want me to just
go right
keep
ahead.
going?
I mean,
all right.
Yeah,
well,
keep going.
That led into the townspeople around there decided that they were going to put together a posse, and they were going to hunt this thing down, and they were going to kill it, and that was going to be the end of it. So a group of men got together, and they went to a clearing, and they staked out a goat. I would like to think that they formed a semicircle around the clearing, that they weren't actually firing at each other. But they were staked out around the clearing, and they're watching, and it's dark, and the cloud comes over the moon, and it goes completely dark, and they hear something coming, and then the moon comes back out, and they can see the goat, and the goat's freaked out, and something that they cannot identify. They've got no idea what this tall, bipedal, hairy monster is, steps into the clearing and begins to attack the goat. At which point, every one of those men opened fire on this thing. Every one of them. In the process, cloud comes back over the moon, and everything goes dark again. And when the smoke cleared and the moon came back out, the thing was gone, the goat was gone, and one of the men was gone. And none of them were ever seen again. Well, the goat or the man were never seen again. And that really got everybody really upset, because this happened right in front of their eyes, even though the moon was going back and forth behind the clouds, and they actually saw this thing, but they didn't hear the man being taken. So, of course, a big game hunter at the time, he heard about this, and he decided he was going to come there, and he was going to find out. There was a cabin there. The Springs, Werewolf Springs is the real name is called Hall Springs. And that is on what was originally the family farm of the Hall family. And he sorry, but anyway, he went to the cabin, and he decided he was going to stay there for a week. So the first night he sits up all night, and he watches out the window at this clearing where apparently this whole event happened, and he sees nothing. And I do not have hair like that. I don't know what to tell you in Northwoods. I don't look like that. Anyway, he's watching this thing and he doesn't see anything. And during the day he goes and he starts scouting around and he's trying to find tracks, and he's really not finding anything. But every night he would sit in the window and he would watch. And sure enough, after about 4 nights, here comes this thing into the clearing. So he's got the window cracked and he sticks the muzzle of his gun through and he fires at it. And all that did was make it angry. The thing attacked the cabin to the point that it tore the door off the cabin, and he wound up climbing up into the rafters. And it's just high enough up that this thing can't quite, it's just doing one of these things trying to get at him, and it's just barely missing him. And this went all night long, him trapped in the rafters with this thing underneath him, walking around in circles and reaching up and trying to grab him, doing everything it can to get to him. And he got down, and every now and then he'd get where he could take a shot at it, but nothing was killing this thing. Nothing. Even when it hit it, it just didn't seem to penetrate. And so finally, it's getting close to dawn. He's got 2 bullets left. He figures one more shot for that thing. If it doesn't make it, he's going to kill himself rather than let this thing get him. And about that time, the sun comes up. And for whatever reason, the thing turned and ran. And it left. And he made it back to town, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to hunt this thing. I don't know what it is, but you're on your own, guys. And so that was the 3 big events, and those were all late 19th century, early 20th century events. But in the time since that's happened, there have been a lot of people. It's become a park. There have been a lot of people who have been there who've heard really wild, crazy screams in the park. There was a little girl right before it became a park who was sent down to that spring to draw some water. And all they found later was her bucket. They never found anything of the little girl. Now, like I said, there's 3 lakes in the park, and one of them along the south edge of I guess it's the western edge of the lake, there's caves. And people have gone up there in those caves and they found bones. And they say that farmers would take rather large livestock up there and to get rid of them if they died so that they didn't stink up the farm. And that's all fine and good, but some of those bones were human bones, and they don't have an answer for that.
That would be a little tougher to explain.
Yeah, it really would be. But that's Werewolf Springs, and it's, people to this day have seen, of course, now right very close to there is a place called White Bluffs, and they have their own screamer there, and what they call the White Bluffs Screamer. And it is actually, they say, some people think that's actually a white dog man. And
nice.
I've only ever heard maybe a couple of times of stories of white dogmen. It's not something that you come across. I've seen quite a few stories of white Bigfoot. In fact, I've seen video of what's supposed to be a white Bigfoot, a couple of different ones. Mm-hmm. But I've only ever heard 1 or 2 stories of a white dogman. And they say the White Bluff Screamer, which is literally, White Bluffs actually also borders the park, I think to the northeast side. I'm not sure. There are a lot of people who have seen that, and they say that it is a white dogman, and it's got a really terrifying scream. Now, there's a lot of legends about that. Some people say that it's actually the ghost of a young girl she was born to elderly parents who'd never had children. They finally have children in their dotage. They have a child, and of course she isn't quite right. And so rather, as horrible as this sounds, there was a time when people treated children who were born with disabilities like animals. They kept her down in the cellar, and they'd throw scraps of food down to her or whatever. And she managed to survive till she got old enough to escape the cellar and kill her parents. And then she ran out into the woods. And there's a really sad story about a couple that came there, I believe in the 1920s. They had about 6 kids, and they decided to basically homestead that land. And they would hear all this noises in the woods at night, and they couldn't figure out what it was until finally one night the it just drive them crazy. The kids weren't sleeping. The couple wasn't sleeping. Everybody was terrified. And I'm sorry, I just realized that you have notes, but none of them apply to me, so I'm good. uh, so the finally it reached a point where the father decided he had to do something about it. So he goes off into the woods, and he can hear the screaming, and he's following the screaming through the woods, and he's trying, and that's all hollers in there, and of course everything's echoing around, and he's getting all turned around and confused. And finally he pinpoints where the screaming's coming from, and he realizes it's coming from his own house. So breakneck speed, he runs back through the woods, and falls over brush and just tears himself up running through brambles. But he gets back to the house, runs inside, and every single member of his family, his wife, all 6 kids, and I believe a parent lived with him, all of them had been ripped to pieces. And the people of the town tried to talk this guy, console him, but he basically had lost his mind. And finally he said, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to kill what killed my family. And he walked out into the woods, and he was never seen again. So, and that is right there on the edge of Montgomery Bell State Park, opposite.
So right there, it's close enough where it could be overlapping with the creature from Werewolf Springs.
It
could be the
very
same
much.
creature.
It could be. That's what I've always thought. It's the same creature. Yes. So.
Now, there's another story, and I know when we start getting into folklore from Tennessee and Kentucky, there's a lot of really creepy places and creepy stories. How far away from there was the Battle of Chickamauga?
Chickamauga is it's about as far away from there as St. Louis is from Fayetteville, Arkansas, probably.
So pretty far.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there might have been a connection with Green Eyes, but
yeah, old Green Eyes. That's a great story, isn't it?
That is a great story.
That's what I was going to ask. We did a show not long ago about the Tennessee Wild Man. There was a lot of stuff in it. It seemed like everybody's description was a little bit different. Some people were saying it smelled like a skunk ape, and there were certain people who described it more like a Patty Gimlin. And then some people even described a dog man, but it was all lumped into the Tennessee Wild Man like it was one creature. But that it kind of spread out from a kind of a big area. I think there was a couple of Civil War battles that factored into that legend.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the legend of Green Eyes, originally they were saying it was a soldier who had been killed, had lost his head to a cannon, and it was his spirit looking for the rest of his body. But then there were other people that said it was something moving among the bodies.
Yeah, the Chickamauga, which is the name of the creek that on the banks of which that took place, actually is in I believe Cherokee is the language. It means the river of death. And it's always had, but long before we ever had a battle there amongst ourselves, it's always had a negative. There were at one time 10 different Cherokee towns that one after another were wiped out by Europeans, but they had always said that land was bloody land. It was always going to be negative. And this goes back to way beyond. Some people think that old Green Eyes is actually an elemental. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know enough about elementals to be able to confirm or deny whether or not old Green Eyes was, but there were people who saw it moving. There were people who said soldiers and officers who reported seeing something strange moving among the dead, clearly. There are those who say that Ambrose Bierce, I like Ambrose Bierce.
Me too, but I wasn't familiar with that one. That's a story I'm going to have to find and read.
Yeah. There's But my favorite story about Chickamauga is a modern day story. And to the day I die, the story will give me goosebumps. There was a bunch of people sitting around a campfire there at the park late one evening, and one of them happened to notice off in the just beyond their sight in the trees a pair of glowing green eyes. And they all became really fascinated with these eyes, and the eyes got closer and closer. And then apparently everybody just suddenly got very tired and very sick, and like they passed out. And when they woke up, one of them was missing, and he was never found. And that just, it's like there's no such thing as safety in numbers when it comes to old green eyes.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that has always really bothered me, because I think of safety in numbers, and I know that horrible racist joke, but it's still, I've always kind of counted on that, and yet it had no effect on saving this man's life. So,
Well, I've heard of times when people have gone out alone and had, really, really strange encounters, and then go back out with a group and have nothing. But for somebody, for the entire group to pass out and then one of them to just be gone, that's
bizarre.
What could cause everybody to get sick and pass out? Possibly infrasound, maybe.
That's from the way they described it. That's exactly what it sounds like. They got dizzy. They were feeling a little nauseous. They were having that kind of sick, heavy feeling in their chests, and that is kind of what I attributed it to, was possibly infrasound. I wanted to tell you real quick. I just happened to think of the name of it. Chattawa, Mississippi. Have you ever heard of that place? They have a beast there called the Chattawa monster.
I've heard of that, yeah.
And what made me think about it, or what I wanted to tell you this, because it goes back to earlier. Guess what the origin story of the Chattawa monster is?
What's that?
Well, there was a circus train going through town.
It was the animals got loose.
And an animal got loose, that's right. So
I think I figured it out. I think P.T. Barnum has set us all up. He released all these things into the wild.
That's like, they're going to think I'm a fake, huh? Well, I'm going to release a bunch of these things.
I'll show them.
The ultimate showman. That would be just about right. So
yeah.
But and also Chattawa isn't that? It's in northern Mississippi, I think. I could be wrong. I couldn't remember. I did the story a couple of months ago called Monster by Any Other Name, because of the fact that the county that that it was in, and of course my mind just went blank. If you look up that county in various states, they all have a lot of strange. It's like Taylor, Mississippi, Taylor, Texas, and Taylor, Michigan. It's the same with that county. Yeah, they all have extensive dog bans. And it's the same with, I can't think of the name. I'll have to look it up real quick. But it's the county that Chattawa's in. Mm-hmm. That, of course, Pike County.
Well, it was like when I went to LBL. When we were staying at a resort there in Grand Rivers, right across the canal from North LBL. When I would talk to people in Grand Rivers, I got mixed reactions. I got downright anger that I would bring it up, and then I would get complete denial. I talked to a deputy sheriff. I even identified myself as a retired officer researching a book, and he told me, "I'm going to tell you one cop to another, you want to drop this and walk away." Yeah. And so I got, but the weird thing is we decided to stay an additional night, and we couldn't get our condo for another night because it had already been booked. So the only place we could stay was in Paducah, Kentucky, which is just a few minutes away. We stayed at Paducah, ate at this little barbecue place, and I started chatting up some of the locals. And in Paducah, not only were they very forthcoming, but just about everybody I talked to had a dogman story. It all concerned land between the lakes. Fishermen who'd seen them from the shore. Everybody in Paducah was like, "Oh yeah, I got stories for you. You're gonna love this." And I talked to a couple of them I thought were just spinning yarns, but by and large, I use interrogation techniques like I did as a cop. By and large, most of the people I talked to, I think, legit had sightings because you can tell by the goose flesh on their arms or the body language. Some of these guys were pretty freaked out over what they'd seen, but it was just like night and day. I mean, I literally got told to get out of a store when I brought it up in a bait shop in Grand Rivers. Guy, that didn't happen. Get the hell out of my store, that kind of thing. But in Paducah, they were like, "Oh God, no! This has been going on for years, and it's not just an LBL. If you live across the lake, you're going to see it."
It's interesting because if you go to White Bluffs, Tennessee, you can't. Everybody wants to tell you about the screamer. Everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own theory. But then you go to a place, another place like the LBL, and nobody wants to talk about it. They're like, "No, it doesn't exist." Isn't Jan Thompson? Isn't she from Grand Rivers?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm not 100%, but I do think that that's.
But it was the weirdest thing, though. Grand Rivers, and I know that's a tourist town. They've got the big fishing tournaments there on the lakes on Kentucky Lake. They've got that big bass tournament every year. And that town's revenue basically revolves around the tourist trade. So I can kind of get why they'd be like, no, we don't want to talk about that. No. But you get some of those little surrounding towns that are away from Grand Rivers, and people are like, yeah, there's something going on over there. And there's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Falk, Arkansas. I mean, you go down it. You've been there, DA. I mean,
yeah.
Some people will say they don't believe in it, but they're going to talk about it because how much money does that town make off the Falk monster yearly?
And Falk is not a big town. When I say you can drive through Falk in under a minute, you can drive through. Yeah, it is not a big town. There ain't much there. Monster Mart, the big mecca for everybody that goes down there, is literally the biggest business there. It's just a jumped up convenience store with a little museum attached to it. But he did say they were going to be expanding. The funny thing is when I met the guy that owned the Monster Mart, it turned out his last name was Roberts, and he was convinced that we were long lost cousins and told me to come back down anytime.
That's funny.
And we are planning on another trip down there. I need to get a hold of him. He said, "Let me know when you're coming." He said, "Because I can hook you up with some people that own a cabin right on Boggy Creek." He said, "You can't stay in the house where the guy got reached to in the bathroom." He said, "That place pretty much fell in on itself years ago." He said, "But there's a cabin right on Boggy Creek he said, it'll sleep a dozen people." He said, "For the most part, people rent it out for a hunting cabin." He says, "But you want to come down and shoot a documentary, that's the cabin you want because it is literally in the middle of it."
That is cool. Debbie Jones. Debbie Jones is she dates Larry Porch. And she
Larry's
has
an interesting dude. I like him.
Yeah, and she has the Sisters of the Moon, which is a group of females that go out. She's actually originally from right there around Falk, and she has told me some wild stories about that place. She's actually, if you can get her to talk, because she's always afraid to. She always thinks, "Oh, nobody wants to listen to me," but she's actually an amazing storyteller. And if you can get her started, wow, she'll blow your mind. Some of the stories just about growing up in and around Falk, Arkansas.
Falk is a neat little place, and it's not exactly on the beaten path. You've got to get off the highway and then take a little jog down to it. But I will say, Annette and I drove down to some of the places looking for the sightings because I cannot remember I want to say the owner's first name was Mike, but I know that ain't it. His last name was Robert, so coincidentally enough, I might actually still have that picture in the brand here. Let me look up there real fast. No. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Here's his card. Denny and Brenda Roberts are the owner of the Monster Mart.
That's right. Because remember we had that conversation because that's my first name and your last name.
Yeah. So him and I were talking, and he told me, he says, "Oh, if you go down this road over here and follow it down till the blacktop ends." And he told me two or three places. He says it's marshy as hell right now. It's been raining. He said, but you get down there, you might be able to get some good pictures from the road. And Annette and I got down there, and our car's front wheel drive. It's not a 4-wheel drive, and we're like, yeah, I'm not going to try to get that. She's like, she looked at me and she called me by my first and middle name, so I knew I was in trouble. She goes, you get us stuck down here and we have to spend the night. I'm going to shoot you myself. I said, no, you won't. You won't want to have to be alone.
That's right. She's going to need somebody to get her out of there.
She'll shoot me when we get towed out.
You got the first and last name on the when y'all saw that thing coming back from the ranch that night too, because you slowed down.
Yeah, I actually got first, middle, and last name when I slowed down to get out of the car.
That's when you know you're in trouble.
Yeah. That was
you might be in trouble with the first and last, or first and middle, but first, middle, and last.
Yeah.
I
was the same with my mother. That's an Ozarks thing. If you hear if your wife or your mother uses your entire name, you done messed up, Ron.
Yeah.
If I heard D. Robert Raines Jr. from my mother, ooh, Lord have mercy, I was running the other way.
Strange Road says, time to grab some late dinner. That might translate to a bowl of cereal. Kevin McAllister vibes with the better half away for the night. Take care of y'all and have a great show. Hey, guys, be safe. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us. Shoot me a message. We'll see about maybe doing some cross promotions with your show and ours. I think it'd be a good thing for both of us. That's another great podcast y'all should check out. Strange Road.
I gave Papa Bear 4 names. First name, 2 middle names, and a last name, so that he could judge by degree just how angry I was. Plus, he has a nickname, so if we all call him Bear, everything's fine. If I use his first name, I'm serious. First and first middle name, I'm a little bit upset. That second middle name pops up, he knows he's done wrong, and if he hears his last name, he runs. And he's 40 years old, and he still runs.
I tell my wife all the time I can run faster scared than she can mad. Her response is, well, you got to come home and sleep sometime.
You still can't outrun a bullet.
I'll be zigzagging.
Yeah. That's my ex-husband learned at a very early stage in our marriage that I was a better shot than him. That'll set a man straight right there.
She's a damn good shot.
So yeah.
I know we were talking a little bit about old Green Eyes, and it's far enough away. It's probably not related to Werewolf Springs, but I keep thinking back to that where the people got sick and passed out, and when they woke up, one of them was gone. Mm-hmm. So if that was infrasound, do you think that would mean Green Eyes is some sort of Bigfoot?
I would love. I mean. Like I said, I don't know enough about elementals to say if Green Eyes is a elemental or not. I just don't. I do know that it has existed since before white men came there, because the stories about it go way back to the Native Americans. Mm-hmm. And from a lot of the descriptions of the fact that the eyes are always seen very up high in the sky, one of the park rangers there, who's actually written books about it, described it, the eyes belonging to a big, bulky form. And my personal belief that a lot of things that people think are one thing or another usually turn out to be a Bigfoot is, I would say there's probably about a 60 or 70% chance that yes, old Green Eyes is a Bigfoot.
So when I know that there was the story that came up right after the battle, that it was somebody who lost their head to a cannon or something like that, and that story kind of floated around. And Papa Bear mentioned there were after action reports from people that saw something moving among the dead. How did they describe what they saw? I haven't seen those after action reports.
I actually, that's a good question, because I don't really remember 100%. The thing that always, in every description, whether it was what was people were seeing wandering around among the dead, or things that people have seen in Chickamauga Park in this century, is always the same thing. It has green glowing eyes. Its eyes are very green and they are luminescent.
Well,
Um,
the thing that, and I know you and I haven't talked since this happened, but back in September, Annette and my son Noah and his best friend Connor, who's kind of like my adopted son, I call him my son. Because he's basically grown up at my house. The four of us went to Lexington, Missouri, to fall into the supernatural. And part of it was out at an old horse ranch, and we did this Bigfoot bonfire out in the woods outside this horse ranch. And when I say it's in the middle of the nowhere, I'm telling you, it's in the middle of nowhere. Um, you go down gravel. It's not a paved road to even get there. You go for ways down gravel. But the whole time we were doing this Bigfoot talk around this bonfire, because we had a big fire going, Annette and Krista, one of the other ladies that were there, they were sitting off to one side, and something kept throwing stuff at them from
wow.
outside the firelight. And we would shine flashlights and stuff, and we would hear stuff moving around us, but we never caught anything. But when we were leaving, it was after midnight when we were leaving the horse ranch. We're heading back into our hotel in Lexington. We get about a mile up the road from the horse ranch, and there was cornfields on both sides. And something emerged from the corn stalks. And at first, my brain says deer, because I was already on alert to hit the brakes if deer walked out in front of me. But as soon as it stepped out, I realized that this thing was massive. It looked directly at me, even with the bright lights on the car, I felt like it was looking directly at me, and the eyes were intensely green. But they were so bright they like faded to white as they got out, and they were so bright I had obscured the thing's face. I couldn't see its face.
Wow.
It walked across the road on all fours, maintained eye contact with me the whole way across. It went about 50 yards across an area. We saw it for almost a minute. I mean, it was not in any hurry, and I'm like letting off the gas and letting the car slow down. And we drive a Nissan Rogue, and the back of this thing was higher than the hood of the Rogue. This thing was huge. It was like a dark gray color. I saw that kind of that tawny gray, and that's what I think what originally said deer, but it didn't move like a deer. It moved like a dog. The back legs were haunched like a dog. It moved like a dog. Annette said she saw the tail, but I was so fixated on the eyes, I don't remember seeing the tail. But this thing, if it was a dog, it had to weigh 800 pounds. The back of this thing was higher than the front end of my SUV. And we watched it walk across the road in front of us and watched it disappear into the corn. And by the time it got into the corn, I was close. I mean, I could have got out and thrown a rock and hit it. So I let off the gas completely. And we're like coasting to a stop, and I start to put the brakes on because I was armed. I was going to jump out and go into the corn and see if I can find this thing. And that's when I got the first and middle and last name. Don't you get out of this car.
I wanted to go to that so bad. No, I wish I had.
It was really neat. That experience out there at the horse ranch, I would like to go back out there. But as soon as we got down there, with the fire started, because we had like 25, 30 people down there for that little Bigfoot powwow thing we did. And everybody, it wasn't just, just me and a few others. Literally everybody heard something walking around us in the woods, and it paced us the whole time we were down there. And I had this light with me. And of course my son, this is a ProTac HL5 from Streamlight. This was my on duty light. This thing's 3,500 lumens. And I couldn't find what was out there. I couldn't find it. I couldn't get any eye shine. This thing's bright enough to turn that section of woods from night to day. I mean, it is super bright. And Noah had one of my lights that's just about as bright. So Robbie can tell you, when you're working on patrol, you carry bright lights. You carry some pretty powerful flashlights. So I had these bright ass flashlights out there, and 3 or 4 of us were armed. So if it'd been somebody pranking us and they came out of the woods, there's a good chance they might have gotten themselves shot.
Yeah.
So, I don't, and we were within stone's throw distance of the Missouri River, and there's so many dogman and Bigfoot stories come along that Missouri River.
This kind of reminds me of something that happened to me a million years ago. We lived, if you've heard my Bigfoot encounter story, you know that I lived literally almost directly under where the Interstate 280 crosses over the Mississippi on a little island called Big Island. It's just nothing but what you would call swamps down here. And to get down to it, you had to take this, it was sort of just a big C-shaped road, but that last section of the road was just muck and dirt, and it was, I mean, you couldn't get any further into the sticks. It'd still be within city limits than that. And by city limits, that just means that the border went out that far. That doesn't mean the city went out there by any stretch. And I was coming home late one night, and I got to that last turn to go, the last leg of the C would take me all the way to the cabin, and it terminated there at the bridge. And I saw a big pair of very, very bright eyes. And I remember getting to the cabin and telling my husband, I just saw the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life. And I was trying to describe it. I said, I really didn't see anything but sort of that, it was wintertime, so it was that grayish color that deer get, the tawny. Wasn't really the brilliant fawn color that you think of, or a lot of city people do. And I said, that's about all I could see of it, was just that it was that kind of, but the eyes. And he pointed out to me that it was a deer. And I missed his point. And he said, you didn't see anything. You certainly didn't see a deer. They're not a predator. You wouldn't have seen both eyes.
Yeah. I saw both eyes of that thing as it watched me.
And that's what I did. And, I've never talked about that because I thought, well, maybe he's right. Maybe I just saw a reflection, because I did see both eyes. But and it wouldn't have made sense for it to be a deer because they're not a predator.
Did you catch that? It made national news about the Amazon driver that was killed by dogs in Missouri, up near Kansas City?
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, it made national news. There was an Amazon driver who was killed, and it was less than 10 miles from where that sighting happened. It crossed the road in front of us. The deputies that responded on scene killed the dogs. They actually went into the house and killed the dogs that were on the property, saying it was the dogs. No necropsy has ever been released, and both the sheriff and the coroner have said they have never seen a body tore up that bad, especially not by dogs.
Wow.
And
That's
that
sort of
happened
like
just back, I want to say, in October.
Sort of like that Corey Godsey case. Everything, that 13-year-old boy over here in Kentucky that was killed by dogs, everything in that case says it wasn't dogs. Dogs wouldn't have dragged his body up that incline. They would have,
right.
They wouldn't have tore him up the way they did. There's so many things about that don't make sense. But the sheriff says, no, that was dogs.
The two people that were killed in Crook County, Tennessee, do you remember hearing about those?
Mm-hmm.
I got a hold of the autopsy reports for those. And I sent them to Robbie. Robbie's a cop. I was a cop for a better part of 20 years. Him and I both looked at those and said, where's the rest of it?
Yeah.
It was missing so much information that should have been in an autopsy.
That looked like a military report. It was so heavily redacted.
Wow.
Right. There was more missing than was there. They basically what that autopsy report looked to me like as a cover story. This is the story you're going to put in your report, and that's what they did. They put that information in there, and they made sure to mention that both of them had a history of drug use and had a criminal history. Like that, none of that goes in an autopsy report. Nobody cares. You're trying to discover the cause of death and the circumstances that caused the death. Their history has nothing to do with the autopsy. For that to be thrown in there, that's smoke and mirrors.
Wow.
Well, Norm even looked at it, and how many autopsies has he probably looked at in his career as EMT, and he was like, "This is just
doesn't make sense."
No.
I think Brenda Hamilton's another case where the autopsy didn't make sense. Mm-hmm. She was over in, I think, South Carolina or North Carolina.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that one myself.
Yeah, and
yep, we talked about that one too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just doesn't make sense at all.
There's a lot of those that are popping up that are dog attacks, and the one you mentioned about the kid, if that had been a dog, I'm saying, I'm going out on a limb and saying, okay, so we take it that it was a dog. I have never seen a dog, even my dog, when it would kill a rabbit or something, it's not going to drag it halfway up a mountain.
No,
I mean, that thing was up a fairly. They had to use equipment to get to where the body was.
Yeah,
it's not something. That's not someplace a dog would drag a kill to.
That was the biggest red. I started to say red herring, but that's not the word I was looking for. Was the fact that dogs just would not have dragged, even if it had been a small animal, to go straight up that mountain. It's just not. It's not canine behavior.
Perfect example that I went out on a call 3 weeks ago, maybe. One of the stray cats in the neighborhood this old guy was feeding had gotten this guy's backyard, and the guy had a pit bull back there, and the cat got in there. The dog killed it. The cat was laying in the same spot, never moved. Once the dog killed it, it was done because there was
anytime my dog would get a rabbit, he'd just bring it up on the porch, and he wouldn't eat it. He'd just bring it up on the porch like, "Hey, look what I did."
Yeah, and it was laying right there in the spot where he got a hold of it and killed it. He let it go because the owner of the dog saw it happen. He said, that's where he dropped it. And the whole time that we were standing out there, stood out there like 15, 20 minutes talking to the old guy that had been feeding the cat, talking to the other guy, and the dog was running around. He never once paid attention to that cat anymore because that's just not. He didn't kill it for food. He killed it because it was in his territory and he doesn't like cats, and that's it. Once the cat was dead, it was. So.
And I've gone to dog attack calls where like a kid got bit by a pet or something like that. Generally, a dog will attack one part of the body, like an arm or a shoulder or a leg. You don't see dogs just literally chew them all up and go over the whole body. That's just not normal.
Have you ever heard of a coyote dropping prey on the front porch?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
Coyotes will destroy a kill, but they won't. I've never heard of a coyote sharing one.
Yeah, me neither. That was for somebody specific's benefit in the room. Anyway.
Well, it seems like a lot of those dog attack stories are. Well, heck, when you and I, Naomi, we found that the guy who had been killed in LBL, and it said, "This is not a cover-up, so stop asking."
That was great, wasn't it?
Literally said that in the article.
Yeah, actually said that. I mean, that's not even an exaggeration or anybody being funny. That is literally what it said. Yeah, don't look.
This is not a cover-up, so stop asking.
When I was a little kid, my mother used to always knew. She said she always knew when I was in trouble because I would look at her and say, "Don't move. I'll be right back. Don't move." And she's like, "Yeah, I know she's gonna go do something." And that's exactly what I thought of when I read that. It's like, oh wow, it's like a little kid. Don't move. I'll be right back.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And a lot of these places that are having dog attacks, and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every time there's a dog attack out there that it's Dogman or a cryptid, because dogs do attack people. It does happen. You have dogs that just snap for some reason. Dogs that have been trained to fight, or dogs that have been trained to be guard dogs, will occasionally get a hold of somebody. But it is unusual for this sheer number of dog attacks all across the United States. And not only are they under mysterious circumstances, they're just, they defy logic. Like a great example is Meeker, Colorado. 80 plus sheep killed, and some of them had no marks on them, and others had marks that they said were indicative of a canine attack, but the bite pattern was much too large. Well, what more of a smoking gun do we need on that?
Well, Monroe County, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Several miniature horses and I think a couple of dogs were killed. And the sheriff looked at it and he said, "This is clearly an animal attack, and I don't know what animal it is." And the DNR came in and said, "No, that was done with knives and guns." And the sheriff's like, "Well, then show me the knife cuts and show me the bullets, because neither one of them are there." And the sheriff absolutely refused to accept the DNR's findings on that because it didn't match what he was looking at.
Yeah.
And we still don't know. I mean, it's still open for debate. The sheriff refuses to say it was anything there were no human footprints. There were no knife wounds. There were no bullets. There were no shell casings. There was nothing to indicate that this was done by people. And yet the DNR insisted on it.
Now, that's another thing. A lot of these, like especially in the Crook County, Tennessee cases, the cases are kept open. Even though they claim, oh, it was the dogs that did it, the cases are kept open. And the reason they do that is open cases are not subject to Freedom of Information Act.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all a game of cards. Shuffle the deck.
Right.
And I'm sure that's exactly what's going to happen with the Monroe County case. It's never going to be.
Well, and
Well, it's the same thing with that case with the Amazon driver. It just got quietly shut up.
Yeah.
You know, the last thing that was reported in the news said the dogs had been sent off for necropsy. Nothing since.
Yeah.
And that was months ago now.
Yeah. Just like you said about the unknown canine, what canine in the United States or even in the world is unknown anymore?
Right. What's not in the DNA database?
Yeah, because I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, there are. One of the things that we have to hold on to is the realization that there are cryptids discovered every year. And so they do come around, but most of them, I mean, I guess all of them at this point have fallen into some genus. If it may be a new species, but it's definitely a genus that they can trace it back to. So if they can't even go that far with it, then definitely there's something they're hiding from us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been saying that for a long time. That not only does the government know about them and have known about them for a very long time, they must think we're just idiots because they start feeding us these cover stories like, oh, it was just dogs. No, there's a lot of things that just doesn't add up. Like the bow hunter in LBL, they try to say that was coyotes. Coyotes don't drag somebody almost a mile.
No.
Coyotes don't snap. Coyotes don't snap compound bows.
No. Yeah, they don't have the wherewithal to. You shot me with this one. Let me show you what I think of that. Although Wiley might have, I don't know. I mean, he's pretty cool. He can actually paint a black spot on a mountainside and turn it into a tunnel. You got to give him credit. I always thought that was pretty cool.
Gotta love it. Gotta love everything from Acme.
Yeah. If only. We'd have this mystery solved if we could buy stuff from Acme.
Yep,
absolutely.
To go back to it, it does seem like, and this is what I find more and more, the more of these folklores that I find and I research and I look into, that every one of them is the early, they all seem to come back to one of two things. They're all either dogmen or they're Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And that's what I really am loving about doing all of this folklore research. I think that if you really study with the White Bluff Screamer, I think that it's clear to me, because they're so close to each other, that is the Werewolf Springs creature. It's got to be the same creature. Same family of creatures. Because
I'd like to go down there. I really would.
You went right by it on your way to Paris last summer. You had to have. You were within.
Sure we did.
You're probably within 45 minutes of it.
Wow. Well, then I definitely need to go back, because that wasn't that bad of a drive.
No. Are you doing Paris again this year? Are they doing?
I don't know if they're doing it in Paris again. Last I heard, they were talking about someplace in New Mexico.
Too
I
far
don't know.
for me.
I know they're wanting to do a second one, but they haven't really announced anything about it. I need to shoot a message to Josh Turner and say, hey, where's it going to be? I want to be part of it. So,
yeah.
If I find out anything, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. I still haven't decided if I'm going to go to Gatlinburg this summer, but I would like to do at least one or two this year.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Gatlinburg's one of the ones I really would like to do.
Yeah, that
Cam
one
said
I
he's
really
not sure if
like.
he's doing it again. I don't know if he's gonna.
Yeah, the last time, of course, this was last summer, and I unfortunately it took place on a really bad week for me. My leg was exceptionally bad, and the drive was horrible, and I wound up not even being able to stay for more than a couple of hours. I was in so much pain. Um, and we even made the point of coming down the night before so I wouldn't have to get there. And it was just an awful experience. And I told him last summer, I'm never going back. I'm not ever going back. I hate going back. But of course, now it's January of the next year and it's time to start planning. And I'm like, I could probably do it. So probably within the next month or so, I'll talk myself into it.
I'm sure at some point we're going to go, you know what? It's not that far to drive. We'll just do it.
Yeah. And one thing I thought would be really fun to do is to do like a group book booth and have people who can't come to maybe send their books and just operate a booth there where people who are there can look at the books and buy them. And if you've got somebody there to operate it for them, it would be, and so I had thought about that, but the few people I've talked to about it are like, no, I don't trust other people to sell my books. I'm like, well, I'd give you an inventory.
Yeah.
You know how much I'm selling them for, but I couldn't. Anyway, it was something. Who said they're close to me? I just saw something about being close.
I saw that too. Blue Crossroads says, Naomi Finn, we're close to each other. We should just go. And I'm doing Gatlinburg this summer.
Oh, Blue Crossroads was the one talking to me about it just the other day when I was, yeah, definitely. So you definitely got your booth then, Blue Crossroads? Oh, no, they didn't get a booth. They just got tickets, VIP tickets, I think. Anyway, yeah, I'm probably in the next month going to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to break down and do it too.
Yeah. We could share a booth.
Well, the thing is I've got 29 books now. My books take up a lot of room.
I've got one book and half a dozen T-shirts. I don't take up any room.
we don't even take merch with us except for some of the patches.
Yeah.
The Wild Hunt patches.
Yeah.
We don't. Those are the only thing we take because otherwise we would need 2 tables. I don't have. Let me see if I can find a picture of the booth from the last setup. Give me just a second. I'll throw one up there. I know I can find one. Talk amongst yourselves. Give me just a second.
So I says to Mabel, I says, and then Mabel says, and you just won't believe what Mabel says. I don't believe half of what Mabel says, but Mabel said, and so you kind of got to listen because she talks like nobody's business, just goes on and just never shuts her mouth. Have you found it yet, DA? I'm running out of things to say.
This is from Fall into the Supernatural. And I don't even think we had all of the books on the table.
Wow.
Yeah, we've actually got 3 of those racks now instead of just 2.
Yeah. I have one book and some T-shirts.
That's where I started. 10 years ago, I was at a table with 1 book and no T-shirts, just a book.
And stickers.
There you go. People like stickers.
Yeah. I got some more that I made that they're coming. I got a really super nice letter from someone that ordered one of my books, an email from them, and it's a man and wife, and I got some stickers on order, so I'm sending them a sticker and one of my cups. This cup awesome. Up here behind me, yeah, has the story of Jehuti, because Neoma means moon. Yeah. And it actually means new moon, but neither here nor there. I still use a full moon. But Jehuti is the Egyptian god of the moon and wisdom and knowledge. And the bird that I use in my logo is ibis, which is his symbol. He's an ibis-headed god. And so I tell the story of Jehuti on the back of my mug, and I was going to send them that and a sticker. And so I thought it was really nice that they sent me such a nice email. But
There's
I'm
a better
just,
picture.
ooh, that's nice. That's a good setup. Yep.
We've got better signage now too. Better
Cool.
than that. My posters in the back. Got some new one of those. But we got 3
Yeah.
full racks. It keeps the table pretty full.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go or not. I really haven't decided yet, but I'm sort of leaning that way.
I think you should. I definitely want to.
Yeah, it's a big show. I mean, you know, it's a pretty good sized facility.
Yeah.
It's probably about, I would say, the size of that hall is at least 6 times as big as the hall at Paris. So
Nice.
much larger
Well,
facilities.
the hall at Paris was pretty nice. But
Yeah.
they really needed the speakers and the vendors in different rooms.
Yeah, they definitely needed to separate that. And at Gatlinburg they do. That's 2 different. I liked the upstairs the first year we went better than the downstairs. But the upstairs was shoulder to shoulder, and you could barely move around. And I got there and I stood in line for 10 minutes just to get to Cam's booth. I thought that it was everybody going through that particular aisle, and I thought, oh man. So I started like working my way through, and I got to his booth and I realized everybody stopped there because they were all there to see him. And I thought, oh, I probably should have stayed in line. But he was like, no, get behind the booth and get to work, girl. So yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed that first trip there. And I got to meet Nance for the first time. And that was really nice because I, had never actually met her. And I'd like for Leslie to come down from Canada, but I don't think she travels much. So, yeah, I know Nance already has her booth space. And I haven't talked to Cam about it. I need to call him and ask him if he's going to go or not. So anyway, I was just thinking, it seems like there are a lot of strange little legends, especially around Tennessee, and they all seem to go back to dogmen. And the Werewolf Springs is one, and then down in Mississippi. And I was also going to tell you that I was up there in Franklin for the Thomas Mandel, and I know UFOs is not the topic of tonight's show, but the similarity there is that for years they denied anything to do with any kind of UFO, and that they were saying that it was a skyhook weather balloon that he was chasing. The problem was that his plane only it tops out at 30,000 feet. That's all it's capable of, and the skyhooks are up at 60,000. And he was within firing range at one point because he wanted to go guns hot. So
yeah, so there's no way that was a weather balloon. And not only that, weather balloons don't tend to outrun P-51 Mustangs.
And the other thing that was interesting is that they had witnesses who were kids at the time. I mean, they were in their 80s, but every one of them looked younger than me, little rat jerks. But anyway, and they were telling the story, and one of them said that debris was falling out of the sky. A lot of people said that the plane exploded on impact, but he said no, debris was falling out, or she did. It was the woman that said it was falling out of the sky onto their house. And
because it makes no sense that he wouldn't be able to bail out otherwise.
Yeah. And another really interesting aspect of that is that the Blackwell, the control tower, the guy who was at the control tower, remained in radio contact with him until impact. He never lost consciousness either. And that was another story that and my point being that our government is very fond of spinning yarns to cover things.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And it doesn't just apply to Bigfoot or to UFOs. It's all across the board. So
Blue Cross says there are countless dogman reports throughout the Tennessee River Valley from LBL down through Alabama
Yeah.
and back up to East Tennessee, all around the Tennessee River. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, that whole area, there are some deep, deep mountain valleys and thick forests that are almost impassable. Um, I've been, the book I'm writing right now is called Dark Frontiers, and it's set right as the Civil War is ending, and it picks up in Tennessee. And I'm looking back at that, looking at some of that stuff up, and even looking at modern Google Earth, just realizing how thick the woods in that area are.
Mm-hmm. Daniel Boone up in Kentucky has got tons of dogman sightings, and that's just miles of nothing but forest and forest roads, and they're all over up there. So
have there been any other recent sightings around Werewolf Springs?
there have been people will go into the park and they'll be hiking because they've got the hiking trails are one step below sidewalks. I mean, it's really easy to walk through that park. And they'll be walking through the park and they hear things screaming at them. And a lot of people have said, oh, it's a big cat, but it doesn't sound like a big cat.
Yeah.
And there have been there definitely have been some cross the road in front of me type events in that area. And of course, a lot of people, if you look at it on the map, it's really not that far south of the LBL. It's not that far away from it. And so that's a whole region there that I think they're thick in that area. So there have been tons and tons of sightings that may not have been attributed to the werewolf of Werewolf Springs, but certainly probably should have been, because if it happens in or around the park, do people attribute it to that? But that entire area is just thick with sightings. And I've been meaning to tell you this for a long time, and I don't mean to jump off the subject again. But when I was doing my show, Werewolf is Full of Monsters, my throat is going. I'm so sorry. I've been recording since about 10 o'clock, and my voice comes out and goes. But anyway, I was looking for different, because there's all kinds. Remember when we did that Cryptids of the Ozarks episode, and you covered Missouri and I covered Arkansas? Man, I missed a lot in Arkansas. I could have done a lot more that night. Well. One of I realized that Google Earth actually maintains a list of Dogman and Bigfoot sightings. That
really?
Yeah. And I was shocked by the number of sightings around Fayetteville over in western Arkansas, northwest corner. There's a white house, and I found it on the map. It's just a little white house that sits almost directly across from a cemetery just south of Fayetteville. And let me see, is Springdale south of there, or is it Springdale's north? So it's got to be south of Fayetteville. And there's a cemetery over here, because I didn't turn my camera around. And there's the house over here, and it's all cornfields around the house and the cemetery. And one couple actually had 3, I believe, different sightings of something. The first time it was on the porch of the house, and it jumped off the porch on all 4s and came and ran alongside the ditch, ran alongside the car in the ditch. The second time it came up out of the ditch and crossed the road in front of them. And maybe there were only the 2 sightings, but you can actually find it on the Google Maps, and they actually list sightings by state. And all around that little particular part, where War Eagle is?
Yes.
I love War Eagle. I love to go to the War Eagle Mill there. Tons of sightings. Park. Yeah. Tons and tons of sightings in that area. And I've been meaning to tell you for a long time, I really messed up that night. I could have really told a lot better stories.
Then we should do it again then.
Absolutely. I still want to do the story on that town that you went through.
Oh, Little Hardy. Yeah, I want to go back down there and film. My wife said if we can go back down there and film, we're not going after dark.
Well, I'll meet you there, and Annette can stay at the hotel, and you and I'll go out after dark and film.
That is such a neat little town when you drive through it, but it gets really, really creepy when the sun starts going down.
Yeah,
It changes fast.
that's really an interesting one. I'd love to really explore that one. So anyway, I don't know. Wow, really? I just flipped over to our chat. Those are some good numbers. Anyway, I'm running out of things. Help me out. I'm starting. You know me. It gets to be a certain time of night, and my brain shuts down.
Mine shuts down all the time. It doesn't have to be any particular time of the day.
Yeah, I think my brain has to be started up before it shuts down, and that's the problem. It never gets started up.
Don Combs says, come on down to Hardy." Don, are you in Hardy? If you're in or near Hardy, we should talk.
Yeah, and please call me and put me in that conversation.
Definitely. There's just something about Hardy, Arkansas. It's just a weird little town.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Absolutely. There's a couple of places like that around here. Yep. Oh, my goodness.
Do you know about this sighting? Do you know about this sighting?
No. But I live in Portland. So, well, I don't live in Portland, but I live very close to there. That's interesting. Who was the amateur ghost hunter? Yeah. Blue Crossroads, do you have my email address? Can you send me some particulars on that? Or a link to where you heard it?
I'd like to hear more about it, too.
Yeah. Well, send it to DA, and then he can send it to me, or I'll send it to me, and I'll send it to DA. Or send it to both of us. That's easiest. Just send it to both of us.
Exactly.
But I'm neomafin@gmail.com, so definitely.
And, I'll just throw mine up on screen. Let me find it real quick. There we go. Yeah, right there. My contact is daroberts@daroberts.net.
I don't think we're going to get email from Blue Crossroads. Apparently, we have email, but Blue Crossroads doesn't.
John says he said yep, so I guess he's from or near Hardy. I would like to talk to you about the history of Hardy, because it's just a really interesting little place, and I had an odd thing happen there near a house that I'm pretty sure is haunted. Long story, but Dawn, reach out to me at that email address. I'd like to talk to you and pick your brain a little bit. Judy Davis says, "Naomi, it's good to see you and listen. Love to listen to you. DA, need a new book to read. I've got one that I'm waiting for Amazon to approve. It is taking forever. My newest book is called Codename Wild Hunt: Death in Dyatlov Pass. Here is the cover. Ironically, it should have been out by now. It should have been out a couple of days ago, but it's still waiting on Amazon. I've done everything I can. I've rattled every cage I can, but it's still, quote unquote, in processing. So hopefully I will have news on that in the very, very near future, but it should be out. Actually, it should have already been out, to be honest, but it should be out very soon.
Okay, pop your email up on the screen, because I misunderstood Blue Crossroads. Did you have it up there? Yeah, right there.
Yeah, it's still there.
At daroberts@daroberts.net. And I'm neomafin@gmail.com. Simple. So, Papa Bear can go on for hours about the Dyatlov Pass story. That is fascinating. I tuned in for that show a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I've got a new subscriber.
Yay.
It just popped up on there. It's Bayou Dan. Hey, man, thank you for the subscription. That is so awesome. Thank you, man.
That's really cool. I've never seen that before.
And my son set that up. I'm not a tech guy. Noah set that up for me.
Is that Noah's voice at the opening now?
Sure
I
is.
thought it was.
We're getting
That's
ready to
cool.
record a new one because we've changed the logo somewhat. So we're going to record a new intro and outro. Uh, I'm sorry, man. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. Toraj Ghaffari says some guy shot it in the face and neck many times, and I'm sure it was some kind of Hollywood fake. Poor guy didn't know what it was at all. He couldn't name it at all. He's talking about the Afghanistan story about a dog man being shot, which I'm going to be digging into as soon as we're off here.
Yeah, I'm going to have to dig into that Portland story. That's really interesting.
Big Vic says, hey, did you give Margolin a Balaleka or a Cossack Saber? I did not. I wish I'd have thought of that. I would have. But he got a code name, so Margolin's pretty happy. Margolin gets quite a bit of FaceTime in this book.
Margolin deserves it. He's a riot.
Margolin's a hoot. You know, the funny thing is that I never really intended for him to be anything other than just this character that got mentioned once in a while. But yeah, people just liked Margolin, and I've got a new short story out. It's on the Patreon. It's called Demons Part 1. Demons Part 2 is coming very soon, and it delves into why Margolin is the way Margolin is. And it's going to be released as a part of a compilation of short stories here, probably in the next couple of months when I've got a few more to go with it. I've already got a couple of lengthy ones, 15 to 20,000 word range. Not really short stories, more like novellas. When I've got 3 or 4 of them, I'm going to compile them and release them all. Sal Paso says, I like it spicy.
How long ago was that Dogman incident in Afghanistan? Was that recent?
He didn't say. I'm guessing that it was recent. From what he was describing, I guess it was recent. I'm going to have to dig into it, see if I can find that video. If I can find the video, there's probably going to be a show just on that. Yeah. Especially if the video looks legit.
Understandable. Robbie, did you fall asleep?
No, I'm answering. Werewolf asked me a question. I was typing up the answer for him.
Oh, okay. I just wondered. I'm assuming that
if I've been asleep, you'd heard it because I've been snoring. My microphone probably blew up the speakers.
I hope I didn't upset Anthony earlier when I was teasing him about touching something. Okay.
I think he's eating. Big Vic, 443 Big Vic says, I'm guessing childhood trauma is why Margolin is so eccentric. Along those lines. It's not quite, I don't think, what you're expecting. And it also winds up involving cryptids. So, Margolin was well aware of cryptids before he joined the Wild Hunt. If you guys want to read that short story, like I said, it's called Demons Part 1. It's available for free right now for those who are members of the Patreon community. That's at patreon.com/DARobertsauthor. Got a bunch of short stories, including another one that's set here in the Ozarks about a dogman encounter set in an area I used to camp and fish called Moon Valley. It's on there. It's up there to be read. And probably later tonight or early tomorrow, I'm going to put up the prologue for the new book that I'm working on. I like to do that for the Patreon community to give them a glimpse of the work in progress. So you're going to get them out the first 6 or 7 pages of Dark Frontier's first hunt. And it's set in 1865, right as the Civil War is coming to a close.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but we have here in Robertson County, we have our own little monster legend called the Critter of Carr Creek. And it sounds like a dogman to me.
Really?
Yeah.
What about it? Tell me, let's hear about it.
Well, Carr Creek runs from here in Greenbrier to Springfield, just outside of Springfield. It's just a little creek. I've passed over it, I don't know how many hundreds of times. But apparently back in the 1940s or 50s, there was a farmer out in his field, and it was fall and you coming into winter, and he was basically looking at the land to see how much forage there was and how much he was, basic farm stuff, trying to make sure he had enough hay put away and checking his cattle. And he had his dog with him, and his dog just suddenly started acting very strange. He dropped his head and started growling at the woods. And the farmer happened to look over, and he couldn't figure out what the dog was looking at. And then all of a sudden he saw it, and he thought at first it was some kind of a great big wolf, and he's looking at it, and it stepped out of the woods and started coming at him, and the dog turned around, and so did the cattle, which were also acting weird at that moment, and they all ran to the gate, which was over behind him, and there's the farmer. He turns around and runs, and he didn't stop. He got to the gate, and he honestly couldn't remember if he'd stopped and opened it, jumped the fence, climbed the fence. He just ran. And
Cleared the gate somehow.
Cleared it somehow. Got back to his front porch where he felt safe and looked back across the road, and there was nothing there. Well, he never said anything for the longest time. He kept his mouth shut. Didn't want people to think he was crazy or anything like that. And so he didn't say anything at all until a pig farmer down the road happened to be out checking his hogs one night. And he got the weirdest feeling that there was something in the brush watching him. And he couldn't, he didn't quite know what it was, but he just got this feeling. And he kept looking over his shoulder, and this would have been in the 60s. And I don't even think today barnyard lights are very good. They just they're like a spotlight that comes down, and you walk into the light and you walk back out into the dark. And he started looking and thinking, well, I've got from here to the spotlight and then the spotlight to the house, and that seems like such a long way to go. And he kept telling himself, this can't be. I don't know what it is. I honestly don't. I can't let this get to me. I'm just imagining things. And then it screamed. And it was a scream like nothing he'd ever heard before. It was this long, horrifying, blood-curdling, vibrate your chest, howling scream. And he decided that the house was close enough, and he started running. And he got inside, and he closed the kitchen door, and he'd gone in through the side porch into the kitchen. And his wife looked at him and said, well, what in the world's wrong with you? And he says, I don't know what is out there. I don't want to know what is out there, but it isn't anything I recognize. And he'd grown up in this area. Well, of course, that made people interested. He actually spoke about it, and then that first farmer started talking about it. He says, well, I know he saw something, because this is what happened to me a few years ago. And one thing led to another, and people started reporting this thing. It goes sort of in cycles. About once every 4 years, they'll start reporting them, and it'll last for a few months, and then they'll go away. There was a young couple who had decided to have a 4th of July picnic on the banks of the creek. And so they laid out their picnic lunch, and they ate, and they decided to go for a nice walk along the creek and through the pasture and the woods and stuff. When they got back, their entire picnic area had just been torn to pieces, and all of the food in the picnic basket had been taken out and eaten, and all of the meat anyway. But they never did see anything, but there was big canine footprints all over the place. And then a few months after that, there was a lady that she was a widow living out in the wood, probably on the farm by herself. And she looked out her back window, and she had a big cow pond out there, and she watched something that looked like, every single person described this as looking a lot like a hyena jump the creek, or jump the pond. And it wasn't a little pond. It was a pretty wide pond to be jumping it, and it cleared it. And now Bowling Green is probably 40 miles north of that. But there were 2 boys playing in the park there, just outside of Bowling Green. And their dad went looking for him. And when he found him, he said, what are you boys doing? I've been calling you forever. They said, well, we're trying to catch the hyena, Dad. We've been following this hyena and trying to catch it. And the dad said, son, there's no hyenas in this country. Oh, yeah, they said. And it's a big one. So, about every 4 years, and it'll last for a few months, people will see this critter of Carr Creek that looks a lot like a hyena.
Well, there's a type of dogman that's described as being very hyena-like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the ones that have been reported with making weird screams.
Yep. Isn't that fascinating? So, I I wonder if that Dogman sighting is just another critter of Carr Creek, because Portland isn't it, well, Portland's in Sumner County, but in Greenbrier's in Robertson County, but they're not that far from each other.
Our roulette wanted to know what color the wolf was that the guy saw in the woods.
The first farmer?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I think it was dark. I think he just described it as being very dark. I'd have to go back and look at my notes, to be honest with you, to tell the whole story. I did an actual episode called Critter of Carr Creek. You want to hear all the stories and
I
hear
definitely
them in a little more detail. Yeah. So, and that actually happened right here around my house. And of course, everybody knows I have strange things going on here. The thing that always strikes me is every now and then, every dog in this neighborhood will just go crazy. And I can't help but harp back to what I heard last night because it's so close. I've never heard anything so close to what I heard back in 1985. But when these dogs go crazy, you can almost hear something like that on top of their howling and yelling. And it'll last about 15, 20 minutes, and then they'll go silent. Just the whole neighborhood. And I live in a neighborhood. My road's about, I think it's a little over a quarter mile long, and there's a dozen houses dotted along it. You know, it's not, they're not real tight together, but it's a neighborhood. But then either side, when you turn off, it turns immediately into country, farms again. And my backyard turns into a holler, and on the other side of that is cornfields or whatever they happen to be planting that year. Cow pastures are at one end, and pastures and fields are at the other. So we're a little neighborhood, but mainly we're just rural area, and we have all kinds of strange, weird things happen out here. So,
well, a lot of people think Dogman is a relatively new thing. The term Dogman is new, but people have been seeing this type of creature for a long time. I mean, the Cherokee refer to it as the Ulonga Doglala, which means spirit with knife teeth, and that kind of says everything you need to know about this thing. It's not something that has just recently come to light. It's only within the last 10 years or so that people started calling it a Dogman. But there have been, Rougarou werewolf sightings dating back centuries. Some of the first sightings in the LBL region around Tennessee, the Tennessee-Kentucky border. Man, what did we find? Like late 1600s from French trappers?
Yeah, if you are you familiar with Moss Mountain in Arkansas?
Yes.
Okay, well, you know about the Moss Mountain massacre that happened there in the 1804, I think. The massacre happened in 1819 is when it happened.
For everybody who doesn't know what that is, you want to kind of elaborate on that just a little bit?
So the Moss Mountain massacre happened when, and I can't think of his name. Oh gosh, if I could think of the name of the woodpecker, I could remember his name because we have a woodpecker. Yeah, Woody. That's his name, Woody. We'll go with that. Now, we have a woodpecker here.
I was like, that can't be that easy of an answer.
Named after him. He was a very well-known naturalist here in the country. He had born and raised in England, was an apprentice for a printer's shop, and decided he didn't want that, and he came to the United States. He explored with Lewis and Clark, and he actually did a solo expedition across basically Tennessee, Kentucky, and the Carolinas. But on this particular expedition, he got on a longboat with a group of men. They went down the Ohio River, down the Mississippi River. When they got to the Arkansas River, they started heading up the river. They had good experiences with the natives. They had bad experiences with the natives. Now, you have to remember that this is just after, the Napoleonic Wars have not been over for long. The War of 1812 is just over. So being British, he may have been just a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Prejudice against French people. Not necessarily the Americans, but he was a little prejudiced, but he complained a lot about the French and their crazy folklore, and so anyway, that's what made me think of it. But anyway, he goes up the Arkansas River, and it gets right. Moss Mountain is not too far from Little Rock. There's a island in the middle it's called Beaver Dam Island now, but at the time it was Beaver Island. They decided to camp there. While they were going down the Mississippi River, several of the men contracted malaria, including, I can't think of his name. I hate it. I'm so bad with names. I am so bad with names. Robbie, if I ever meet you and I call you George, just accept it. I just terrible with names.
Believe me.
But anyway, they're camped on this island, and like I said, they'd had good and bad relations with the natives. They didn't know really in the area they were in. They'd all been sick because, they'd all gone through the ravages of malaria. Some of them still had it. At night, this was October 31st. The men would camp. When they put up their camp, they'd build their fire in the middle, and a lot of them would sleep on the perimeter of the camp. Some of them would sleep closer to the fire. Yeah, but they never slept in a row or, where they would all be easily attacked and killed in one thing. And in the middle of the night, Woody, whatever his name is, woke up, and he looks and he sees these massive figures moving around in the firelight. They're like two-legged, massive, huge, giant men-like creatures. And he's just seeing their silhouettes against the fire, but they're going around the camp, and they're picking up the men and his crew, and they're ripping them to pieces. And he's watching this from his sort of secure spot on the edge of the camp. And finally, he's not feeling well. He's just getting over malaria himself, which of course you never truly get over malaria. It always comes back on you. And he passes out. And the next morning he wakes up, and thinking he's the only one alive, crawls to the center of camp. There's carnage everywhere. There are bodies torn apart. There's pieces of bodies here and guts there, and it just looks like it's a massive carnage. And he hears a moan over under the brush, and so he goes over, and one of the men is still alive. And he said, what happened? And the man says, I don't know. He said, I was picked up and thrown down, and I hit my head, and I was knocked out. I don't know who or what picked me up. I don't know what I saw. All I know is I could hear everybody screaming, and by the time I got rolled over to see what was going on, I was being slammed to the ground. And ultimately, I think there were a total of 4 or 5 men that survived it. And he wrote about it in you can actually pull up his journal. Interestingly, I found this very interesting. The expedition lasted from 1818 to 1821. The part of the journal that you can pull up ends in the middle of October of 1819, right before that incident. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, strange.
I can't imagine why they would have stopped it there.
Hmm.
But most people say that, most of the experts say that they were attacked by Indians, but he went to his grave saying there is no Native American who could pick a man up and tear him apart like that. And he insisted that, but anyway, they call it the Moss Mountain Massacre because Moss Mountain is right there. And if you are ever watched any kind of PBS and you know who P. Allen Smith is, he has a gardening show that has had several gardening shows on PBS. He lives on Moss Mountain, has one of the most beautiful estates in the country. And every year he has a Halloween party, and they talk about the ghosts of Moss Mountain coming up out of the woods. The ghosts of those men that were massacred that night come up out of the water on Halloween. And thank you. Yes, Thomas Nuttall. That's who it is. Oh.
Yeah, Trisha Arnold pointed it out too.
Yeah, thank you guys. I am so bad with names. Nuttall's woodpecker is the name of the woodpecker. But yeah, and so they have a big Halloween thing, and he tells that story, and that's how I learned about it. But it's what I find really interesting about that particular story. You can't, you can't. It seems to me like it would be a huge, major story in the Bigfoot community, and yet I've told that story a dozen times now since I learned about it, and
Well,
people are like,
I think I want to do a show on it too now.
"You should." It just remember to tell them they can hear the story on my channel too.
Yeah, then maybe you
But
should come on and talk with us.
I will. I'll come on and we can go into detail about it because it's really a fascinating story, and to me it's so obvious that these men were attacked by Bigfoot, and yet so many people in the Bigfoot community just aren't familiar with it, and I don't understand why.
Here's something. When I started researching the book that I'm writing now, Dark Frontiers, I started researching the Ozarks circa 1865. I was looking up details, locations. I even got a couple of historical societies to send me period maps, which is really neat. But something jumped out at me, a detail that I find odd. In the 1800s and even up until fairly modern times, the average height of most Native Americans was significantly below 6 feet.
Right.
Do you know what the average height of a Osage warrior was in 1865?
No, I don't actually. They're not the tall
6.5 and
ones.
7 feet tall.
Holy Moses!
The average Osage warrior was between 6.5 and 7 feet tall.
Well, they were going through Osage territory at that point. A lot of the experts maintained that those men were attacked by Native Americans.
Even at 6.5, 7 feet tall, I can't see a human tearing somebody limb from limb and picking them up. But it makes you wonder if there might have been something a little extra in the Osage DNA.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Somebody sneaking out to the woods and having a little fun. But yeah, I mean, again, it's a story that I don't understand why it isn't well known in the community, because it certainly to me is a very obvious representation of a very early encounter with cryptids.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, some kind of cryptid. And like you said, even if there were men that as big as he was claiming they were, they still would not have been strong enough to tear them apart. Yeah.
Well, they were allegedly during Lewis and Clark's expedition, but they encountered some sort of cryptid. But those pages are missing from their publicly released journals.
I actually tried to do a story on that, but I could never get enough information to put a whole story together. I could probably do a short on it, but I really had a hard time. My husband, Brad, he was the one that actually was like, why don't you do that story? Well, I just can't find enough information on it to really put a good one together. So,
Papa Bear's got a good point. He said so many Native American stories talk about killing a giant race in their history. Maybe not all of them were killed and bred into tribes. But that would certainly explain why, the Osage were, head and shoulders above pretty much the average height of anybody in that day.
Yeah. Kind of makes me wonder about the giants.
The Lovelock?
Yeah. Really, what in the heck is going on in that area that these big things are popping up?
Well,
but
like we were talking about with the Janoska, they would raid villages and carry the women off. What are they doing with them?
Well, they were either keeping them for mates, or they were eating them.
In answer to Lil Patty, I'm not sure it was a Bigfoot. I'm not sure it was a Gugway. I am not sure if it was a Dogman. All I know is that what I really do feel in my heart, it was not as a human being. It was definitely some kind of cryptid that attacked those men on Beaver Island. It just, there's no way it could have been a human. I know, like I said, Nuttall talked about different, having different interactions with the various tribes as they met them. And a lot of them, he had actually a very high respect for natives, which was very unusual, because most people, most conquerors come into a country, they see the natives of the land and they speak very poorly of them. But he considered them all very intelligent people, very, I mean, they had a very strict code of ethics, which to him was a sign of civilization. And
Well, Kit Carson and Jim Bridger both tried to tell the U.S. cavalry, like, you treat these people with respect and you're going to go a lot farther.
yeah.
I
But,
mean,
you know, those
Jim
people
Bridger
had,
warned Custer. Jim Bridger told Custer, he said, if you the Sioux are a powerful nation, treat them with respect, or you're going to regret it. And look what happened.
I just recently discovered, and this is completely off topic, but well, not completely, but my younger son's wife is the great, I want to say great, at least three greats. She's the descendant, let's put it that way, of Bigfoot, who was the, I don't know if he was Dakota Sioux or Oglala Sioux, chief whose people were massacred at Wounded Knee.
That was
Were they
they were
Oglala
Oglala.
Sioux?
They were
Okay.
Oglala.
And that was my niece is a descendant of his. In fact, her mother did not. Her mother recently died just this last year, but she lived on the reservation her whole life because of the fact that, being his descendant, she really never felt like she could leave it. So I thought that was really fascinating. Yeah.
With the Wind says, it's intriguing how many cryptid stories disappear from popular texts, both in indigenous and Western writings. From certain accounts are removed.
Yeah.
Well, there was the listing they found, the Vikings in Vinland, talking about the Skraelings. The Vikings described them as huge, hairy men that basically drove them out. But you look at that only pieces of that story survived because most of that of Leif Erikson's journal was destroyed.
Yeah. I would love to. I know I could pay for Nuttall's journal. If I get the money together, I actually would love to have a copy of his whole journal of that expedition.
That would be interesting reading.
Yeah.
I'd like to get a full undoctored copy of Lewis and Clark's journal.
Yeah.
Tombstone says we have an Outback style hairy man Yowie that would steal and eat children too. So it's not just here in the United States.
No, it's definitely worldwide.
Well, in our show last week, when we was talking about the Yeti, that's what we talked about them trying to snatch native girls there too. I mean, so it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah.
I would hate to have Bigfoot look at me and say, "Gosh, you're pretty."
You might not understand him. You just be like,
oh yeah, but a woman knows that look. That would not be a look I'd want to see. Like, nah, thanks.
Ooh. like Tangier rock, like the shiny rock, like whoa, whoa.
There's a couple, and I heard she used to come on they did, used to come on Wes Germer's show, and she was actually having this thing where one of the Bigfoot was exchanging things with her, gifts with her, and she said at one point, "I'm beginning to think he has a crush on me," and I'm thinking, I would
that move. That would not be a good thing.
I would be so out of there. It would take me about 3 seconds to pack. I'm not sure I would bring anything with me, but I would be gone.
We're just sending movers back to the house. I'm not going back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a dude, and I'd be like, "Would you look at the time?"
It's about 8:30. Get the hell out of here.
What was it that?
Go ahead.
Go
what
ahead.
were you gonna say? No.
I can't remember his name, but he used to talk about putting on lipstick and trying to look pretty or whatever. Oh, who was it that used to say that? Uh-oh, I froze.
Oh, you're still fine on our end.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I froze for a second, or you guys did. That's, it's getting to be that time. 10 o'clock at night. My internet always has acted up. So, but anyway, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that the other day when we were talking, you mentioned that one of your favorite stories that had anything to do with cryptids was the Cowboy Man story.
Yes.
Would
do you
like
remember
to
that
kind of
story?
I do, but I would like for you to tell that story because it's one of your favorites.
Well, and I'm not sure I'm going to tell it correctly because it's been a while. But the way I
That's the thing
remember
about
it, there was.
storytelling. As long as it's
I
told
know.
well, we don't care.
Okay, just as long as you guys take everything I say from this point forward with a grain of salt, we'll be good.
Well, they already know they got to take anything I say with a huge grain of salt.
I just carry
Like
a salt block
mine.
with me.
You have watched our show here.
Clearly, we've
I
met,
used to
right?
be part of this show. I know what it's like.
But you've watched it lately, though, right? I mean,
So anyway, out in Washington, there was a man who went out there. He went to work, I believe, assuming it's Washington, it must have had something to do with the lumber industry. And they rented a house and out in the middle of nowhere. The wife and the little boy, and I think there may have been one or two other siblings. They would stay there during the day, and of course, the man would go off to town. And naturally, this was a long time ago, so we're talking one vehicle. And the woman is out hanging laundry one day, and she says, the boy comes up and he's talking about the Cowboy Man. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" She says, and he says, "The Cowboy Man. He always comes to the fence and talks to me." And why he called him the Cowboy Man, nobody ever really explained. But when he described him, this kid's describing a Bigfoot. And the mom gets a little bit freaked out. She doesn't, and I'm so vague on this because it's such a great story, and I know I'm going to mess it up. But she's a little freaked out. She tells the dad about it, and the dad, he's imaginary friend. Don't worry about it. Well, this kid gets more and more into this whole Cowboy Man. It's a Cowboy Man, and he's coming. And apparently, at one point, the Cowboy Man actually tried to take the little boy away. The reason that this story strikes such a chord with me is because way back in 1985, I don't know what that feedback is. Is that coming off of me? Or are you guys not hearing it?
I hear like a little bit of like a sizzling sound, but it's pretty quiet.
Okay. Anyway, way back in 1985, I had my experience. I'm sitting at a pond. I've got both of my children. One was 3 years old and one was 5 months old. They are in one of those playpens. Those make them like out of netting, and they had like a yellow vinyl rim, and they were collapsible. And I had put them in the playpen, and I'd laid mosquito netting over it. They're sleeping. I'm not fishing because it was a backwater pond, and I don't fish for dogfish. So I'm sitting there looking up at the sky. I start hearing this rustling and this noise behind me, and it freaked me out. And eventually I saw the thing, and I won't go into too much detail about my encounter, but I did see this thing step across the clearing that led out to the road over to, because this side, and which is really this side in my house. But anyway, and it went down into the pond, and it splashed around, went to the pond was never, I don't think that the whole length of the pond was probably 30 yards long, and I don't think any part of it was more than 4 feet deep. So I don't know what it was doing in there, splashing around, maybe trying to catch fish, whatever it was doing. I had a little playtime, a little bath time, a little fishing time, whatever. Got out at the other end and left. Okay, that's my story. I was so freaked out by this giant shadow because really it was I saw the silhouette of this thing, but I didn't see anything in detail. And what I'd been hearing behind me and what I heard in the water, that I threw my kids in the car, threw the playpen in the car, put out the fire in the Coleman lantern, and start honking the horn for my first husband to show up. He didn't show up, yada yada yada. Years later, I heard the Cowboy Man story. And then, and only then, did it occur to me that the whole time I heard that noise behind me, my children were in that playpen behind me, and they had nothing but a mosquito netting over them. And at any given moment, that thing could have crept up to that playpen, took my children, and I'd have never known. And to the day I die, I mean, right now, I'm trying to not sound emotional, because to the day I die, I will never forget the fact that I let my children be in danger that night, and I didn't even know it. And it was hearing the cowboy man story that made me realize, that was the first time I'd ever actually realized that Bigfoot takes kids. It could have been there to take my kids. And that's what happened with this little boy. This thing tried to take him. Well, it didn't happen. They ultimately, the guy didn't come into work. Oh yeah, hush, 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 hush. No. You were not going to be raised by Harry. You'd have been Harry's meal, son. Harry's meal. Anyway, the guy didn't come into work, and so his boss drives out to see what's happened. He gets out to the house, no one there. The vehicle's gone, no bodies. No, I don't remember if the vehicle was there, and I don't think it was. But there's nobody there. But the entire inside of that cabin had been torn to pieces. Door had been ripped off of it. Things had been thrown around. I mean, it had just been ransacked. And that's the cowboy man story that I remember. And that the reason that that story strikes such a chord with me is because Bigfoot tried to steal that little boy. And I realized, that was the moment when I realized that my children had been in danger that night, serious danger that night, and I didn't realize it. I mean, you want to feel like a bad mom, or bad dad in your case? Think about that. You know, that sudden realization that, oh my God, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
What kind of idiot am I? And then that's why I'm not I have lots of friends who seem to have great relation, be able to gift and and be gifted by these things, but I'll never be that person. I will never be that person. To me, they're a wild animal, and they will always be something to be treated the same. I wouldn't walk up to a bear and shake its hand, shake its paw.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's why Cowboy Man strikes such a chord with me.
Well, I'm right there with you. I've been saying for years, don't gift these things, especially gift them food. The last thing you want is these things to start associating you with food.
Right. You don't want to habituate them.
And you might not be the one that suffers. Let's say you've got this tree stump you found out in the middle of the woods along this trail that you leave Snickers bars on, and it leaves you little shiny rocks or what have you. Well, you don't go out there for a month or two, and some guy bipping by and listening to his iPod and wearing a pair of Birkenstocks stumbles up on that tree stump and goes missing.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't bring a Snicker bar. He had to pay.
Right. Got a new subscriber, Arvilla Bowler Jack. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I think
what's that, Robbie?
I was about to say, I think Meg hit the nail on the head with that. She was like, Naomi, don't do that to yourself. I don't think anybody would have realized they were in that situation until.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Of course you reach a point where you can reason yourself through it. But there was a moment where.
Oh, yeah. I can totally agree and see, especially right at the beginning when you started putting two and two together.
Yeah, and it was like a bolt of lightning when it hit me. Had you put two and two together
and kept doing it, that would have been irresponsible.
Very.
As soon as you realized you rectified the problem.
And by the time I did realize it, shoot, I'd raised them. They'd already gone bad. No, I have two wonderful sons, but it's just the fact that you have that moment when you suddenly realize how much danger that situation was. And of course, it's in the past, so you cannot, under any circumstances, rectify it, no matter what. And it was a gut-wrenching moment for me. It was a really gut-wrenching moment. It's a reason why I'll never forget the story of the cowboy man. So,
Mrs. Step Yoda, she said, she made the comment, she said, ha ha, he's the new hippie Rolo snack bar. So,
yeah.
so I said it tastes like granola and patchouli.
And a little bit of Birkenstock leather. Yeah.
He's a Kachava drink.
There you go. So anyway, guys, you know how I am. I'm so sorry.
Getting late.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. We'll start wrapping things up. We're past the 2-hour mark. I got a couple of things that we'll do as a kind of a wrap up. We've got to talk about our affiliates. But if you need to call it a night, that is perfectly fine. We'll wrap it up from here. But Miss Naomi, you are always so awesome to have on the show. I absolutely love having you on.
Feels like being home.
Well, you are welcome anytime. If you see a topic we got and you want to jump in, you just let me know, because you always bring such a great perspective. And I want to do a show on that massacre of at the Mound Hill.
That Moss Mountain massacre.
Mountain. Do me a favor.
Mm-hmm.
Send me the links that you found, those Google Earth listings, and that Moss Mountain, and I'm going to pull some research on that and going to plan a show on that.
Sounds good.
So I definitely want to get you back on for that, because we're both Ozarks kids. That's the perfect place for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, anyway, I want to say good night to everybody. You've all been great. And again, it just feels like being home. So, and I'll talk to you probably tomorrow, DA.
Okay.
And
I will be around.
all right. Good night,
Thank you.
guys. Okay.
Have a good night.
I just hit this button. All right. Good
All
night.
you gotta do is close the browser. That'll take care
All
of it.
right.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Good night.
Bye.
Oh, Naomi is so awesome. I love having her on.
She's a
Tim,
wealth of information for sure.
definitely. Tim, if you'd throw the link to her channel up again, that would be so awesome. But wanted to take a minute to talk to y'all about our affiliate program. Yeah, we are affiliates with both Dark Angel Medical and Scallywag Tactical. Scallywag Tactical, I know you guys have heard us talk about their knives. Just absolutely awesome blades. I've got several of them. Some of the best knives I've ever owned. Yeah, you get the Dew Claw there. This one's called the Valhalla. That's not the Dew Claw. That's the
this is the Dew Claw. Yeah,
this is the Valhalla,
which is basically just smaller version of what you got.
Wicked sharp little knife. Of course, you've got the ones we talk about in the books, the Gunner's Mate and the Bounty and all of those. They have so many knives, and some of their pocket knives right now are on sale, $18 to $20. I mean, for the quality of the knife you're getting, they're astoundingly well priced. Right there is the link. You can use that link, or you can just go to scallywagtactical.com and use the discount code DARoberts10 at checkout. And that's even counts on the discounted blades, because they have some they call their blemished blades that are on sale right now. I've had several of the blemished blades and have yet to find anything wrong with them. Generally, the ones I got, the only blemish was the box that the knife is shipped in was crushed, and they couldn't sell it as new. So just amazing group of guys. It's a veteran-owned company. Craig Burhart, the owner, is an awesome guy. Absolute amazing dude. So check them out. Check out the blades they have over at Scallywag Tactical, and again, let them know that we sent you. And Doc couldn't be here tonight, but Doc owns Dark Angel Medical. I've carried a Dark Angel Medical kit since God was corporal. I've had one forever. I would not trust my life to any other kit. They make the best trauma kits in the business. I carried a Dark kit. I don't know if I've got one in easy range. I don't think I do. I think I put that on the shelf. But anyway, I've carried multiple of their kits. And if you're going to be doing anything out in the woods or hunting, fishing, backpacking, hiking, anything like that, take a medical kit with you. They have kits for all occasions. They have your basic first aid kits. They have what they call an everyday carry kit, which is your basic trauma kit. I carried something a little more than that because it's a cop. The possibility of getting shot was a real possibility, so I carried a full trauma kit. But Dark Angels kits are the best in the business. They've got like 158 lives saved so far, and the great thing about their kits is if you use your kit to save a life, including your own, they will resupply that kit for free for life. It's called the Kit for Life Guarantee. So use the link right there, and I'm sure Toom has already put that up in the chat. And use the discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your entire order. That's the biggest discount they offer, and that's for the folks here at the DAX Machina Nation and the fans of the books, because I have ads for both Dark Angel and Scallywag in the back of the books now. So just a couple of great companies, both veteran owned. Doc is a hell of a good guy. He's a little under the weather tonight. He's got the flu, so keep Doc in your prayers tonight. And again, keep Toom and his wife. They've had kind of a rough patch, and keep them in your prayers as well. And Miss Lene, she's on the mend, and she's an awesome lady. And we continue to pray for her health. And appreciate all the prayers you guys gave me. The first round of shots went well. The next round of shots is on February 2nd, and then sometime in late. If those go well, the final round, the third round, should be sometime in late February, and that will be the one where they are going to basically burn the nerve endings, and I should, in theory, should be pain free for 2 years or even more. So keep your fingers crossed for me. The next couple of sets of shots go well, and I could be off the pain meds for a couple of years, which me, I hate taking meds, so that would just be fantastic. Want to say a big thank you to all the moderators in the chat tonight. Moderators do an awesome job. Such a great group of people. They are doing an amazing job. Thank each and every one of you guys keeping the bots out of chat and helping keep things civilized. And not that we really have any issue with that. We've got a great group of people in our chat. We don't get a lot of drama like some channels do, and we don't go in for the drama. We're not really interested in all that. We just enjoy talking about cryptids, and like I've said many times, there are no experts in this field, and anybody that claims they are an expert is probably trying to sell you something, probably a bill of goods. We share stories. We talk about sightings. We talk about the creatures. We talk about what is known about the creatures and what we suspect. And I think between Robbie and Anthony and Doc and even Steve, we all bring an interesting perspective. Robbie and I, and even Anthony to an extent, bring a law enforcement standpoint. Robbie and I were both field cops. Anthony worked kind of behind the scenes in law enforcement. Doc is both military and medical. Steve was briefly in law enforcement, and is a registered nurse. So all of us guys here, we bring our own perspective and our own knowledge to the field. And I'm so happy that I've got such a broad spectrum of guys to have in on this, because if it's a question of tracks or foot morphology, well, we may not have Dr. Jeff Meldrum, but I got Robbie Raines over here. And if his department thinks he's good enough to track fugitives, he's good enough to tell me about tracks. I can tell you that. And I know how to track to an extent, but Robbie attracts circles around me. So when it comes to Bigfoot tracks or any animal tracks, he's my go-to guy. But we've got some interesting folks here that come in and out as co-hosts and bring their perspectives, and we really enjoy the fact that we can talk about these things, and everybody has such a welcoming attitude, because we don't dismiss anybody's claims, and even the claims that the reports that people refer to as the woo. Robbie and I'll tell you, we don't say it's impossible, but we look for logical explanations. We're not trying to say that didn't happen. We're just saying that there might be a more logical explanation on why it happened, and that's what we look for. We take on a very evidence approach stance on cryptids and things that go bump in the night.
That's just the nature of what we are and what we do, and what you got to look for that's what we have to do in our job, and that's just why it carries over to what we do right now. You know, what does the evidence support? Where do the facts take us? That's
Right. Yeah, and even though you get some of these encounters that have what some people refer to as fantastical claims or woo claims, just because that has that element to it doesn't mean there might not be another explanation for it. Sometimes these things just really shed a great light on the subject, and even if it's not aliens or a portal or something like that, if we can find a logical explanation. It's like the old taps, the ghost hunters, the ghost hunter team. They would go in and look for things that explained what the paranormal event was, and sometimes they couldn't. But sometimes it was a pipe. When they thought they heard something banging in the basement, it was a pipe. And if they could find a logical explanation, that's what they looked for. We're not necessarily trying to debunk stories. We're looking for logical explanations on why some of these things could happen. And again, this is our opinion. There are no experts in this field. We could be 100% wrong. Everyone in the audience tonight, your opinion is just as valid as any of ours. It's one of the great things about this is we can agree to disagree. Just because one person's had one experience doesn't invalidate another person's experience. So we look at these experiences, and what we look for in these is we look for commonalities, and these commonalities help us build patterns of behavior. Much like the FBI profile serial killers, we look at these cases, these sightings reports, sometimes hundreds and even thousands of sighting reports, and we look for those little commonalities, and that helps establish behavior. And that's what's going to bring this home. It's what's going to finally prove something, is when we can establish patterns of behavior and actually build a predictable model to show this is going to happen, and that's what we're trying to do with this. So we just want to let you guys know how much we appreciate each and every one of you. The stories, the love we get in the chat, people telling us how much they enjoy what we do, and we enjoy what we do as well. I've said it before, we'll say it again. We don't have fans, we have friends. And to me, this is like, just gathering with a group of people and sitting around a campfire talking monster stories and Bigfoot and folklore. Stuff I did growing up, and it's just a bigger version of that. We appreciate each and every one of you guys joining us around the campfire, or as Robbie says on his show, joining us at the cabin. Robbie, tell us about your channel before we wrap things up.
Shows we like to call is DAX Machina Light. We talk about the same stuff on our show that we talk about here, but just a little bit shorter show. We usually do about anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes ish. We had one this last time that went a little over an hour, just because it was it was movie monsters, and me and Johnny got to rambling on about stuff like that. But just most anything that you like from this show that we do on this show, we talk about on that show too. It's called What's Really Out There. We've got a YouTube channel. We've got a Facebook page, both the same name, What's Really Out There. Email address is what's really out there 2022@gmail.com. Got anything around southeastern United States, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, any of those areas, we'd love to look into it. Myself, Norman Meredith, who's usually in chat. I don't think he was here tonight. I think he was working tonight. And Johnny Sanchez. Just, pretty much the same type of atmosphere that we have here, we have there. We look at ourselves as a smaller affiliate of this channel, and we subscribe mostly to the same
schools of thought.
Schools of thought. Thank you. Couldn't get had a brain fart there for a second, but yeah, it's the same type of thing. We pre-record our shows, and they usually are set to drop every Monday and Friday, I believe, is how we've been doing it the past few times. But we finally got a little bit ahead because this is kind of a busy time. We record on Tuesday night, so I can set them up to drop because I'm here on this show on Wednesdays and Saturday nights. I've got soccer going on right now because I'm a soccer coach, plus still working full time and still doing the woodworking stuff. So yeah, it's kind of it's kind of good to get a few episodes ahead, so you can have a little bit of extra time. So, but yeah, if y'all go and Tombstone's been putting the stuff up in the chat. Appreciate that, and DA's putting it up right now. You go give us a follow on YouTube. We'd appreciate it. We just hit what I say today, 200 on Facebook.
Yeah, head over there and give them some subscriptions. Show them some love.
Yeah, we only got like 30 subscriptions on the YouTube channel. It would be nice to boost the numbers up on the YouTube.
So it's 54 now.
Hey.
So you're up a few.
Up a few. So still be nice to get all 200 that's on the Facebook page to go to the YouTube channel too. But, you know, check it out if you like it. Subscribe. We got a couple more good shows coming up. I think we're going to do a show on the Rougarou, and which is kind of near and dear to my heart because I've got some Cajun relatives live down in Louisiana, down in the bayous. So we're going to do a show on that, and don't know what our second show that we're going to record that night is. I can't remember if we decided on one or if we hadn't decided one yet, but we're all getting together tomorrow, so we'll figure it out. We're going to go do some Sunday fun at Johnny's place tomorrow afternoon. So we'll figure out what we're going to do. But that's pretty much it on that channel.
Well, definitely swing by, What If It's True YouTube channel and give them Tricia Arnold said she just subscribed, so we'll send a few your way. Folks, yeah, show their channel some love. They're just starting out and they could use the support. Taraj Ghaffari says, so many people talk about Dogman encounters, something happening. If you're just listening to the Dogman Encounter show, they're calling from U.S., Canada, Germany, and England. Yeah, just the other day, the last show we did, we had researchers on from England and Australia talking about both Dogman and Bigfoot sightings in their area. So this isn't something that's just, just here isolated here to the U.S. It's all over the world. That's a topic for another time. We'll definitely be doing that again. I want to get Leon and the boys from Australia back on. Again, thank you guys for joining us, for spending your Saturday evening with us. We had a wonderful time. Big thanks to Miss Naomi. We are going to get her back on soon. We're going to be talking about some of those stories we were talking about, and I'm looking forward to really digging into some of those mysteries there. I want to try to get out here in the woods in the next few days and do some filming. If the weather holds. It's been kind of nasty the past couple, but we want to try to get some footage so I can share it with the channel. Bill Whitaker says, I just walked away from 2 people working on trails when I heard it. I don't think I caught the first part of that. I know I missed that first comment then. Sorry, I was looking at it. Oh, there it is. He says, had something whistle at me once, clearly this year in the woods. It's not uncommon. Bigfoot have been known to whistle at people. But folks, these things are out there. Whether the government wants to admit it or not, people are seeing them. People from all walks of life. It's not just the old joke about, like I've said before, the guy with no t-shirt on and bibbed overalls with one strap undone, going, "Yes, sir, I saw that Sasquatch and he stole my chickens." It's not like that anymore. That old joke exists for a reason, because you had those guys were the ones that always seemed to make the news when they interviewed somebody about a tornado that went through. Yeah, the tornado went through and it stole my chickens and knocked my trailer house over.
It was Pandalarium.
Pandalarium, folks, I'm telling you. But it's not just a joke anymore. The news tried to make people who believed in this sort of subject look like idiots, and I think it blew up in their face. Shows like the one we have here, shows like Dixie Cryptid. There's so many shows out there now that allow people to have a forum to share their stories and share their tales, and where they won't be judged. There's so much of this available now, and we're grateful that you guys spend time with us and are willing to share your stories, because these things are out there. As William Nighthawk will tell you, the Native Americans have known about them for a long time, and it's just an accepted part of their worldview. And I think it'll be a time eventually when we can no longer ignore the fact that they're out there. So, folks, again, thank you guys for spending the evening with us. I know this has been kind of a lengthy Ozarks good night. We had a great time tonight. Again, big thanks to Miss Naoma. Please go check out my books over at daroberts.net. I should have a new book dropping as soon as Amazon approves it. Hopefully that will be in the next day or so. It's already been submitted 3 days ago to Amazon, so waiting for it to meet their approval, which usually doesn't take this long, so I'm kind of get a little frustrated with them. But the new book, Codename Wild Hunt, Death and Dyatlov Pass, should be available anytime now. Folks, if you and I'll announce it first on the Patreon, because they've been waiting patiently. If you're not a member of the Patreon community, go over and check it out at patreon.com/DARobertsAuthor, because we've got a lot of stuff over there that's not available anywhere else. A bunch of short stories over there that just they aren't available anywhere. I'll also probably tonight, maybe tomorrow, I'm going to post the prologue of the new book that I'm working on. It's called Dark Frontiers, First Hunt. And it's set in 1865, right at the end of the Civil War. It's about a guy that inadvertently becomes a monster hunter. And I'm pretty excited about the way it's going so far. I'm really enjoying it. To me, that's one of the best things about being a writer is when you really enjoy what you're writing, because it shows. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. This project is going to be something I'm pretty proud of when it's done. And I think a lot of folks are going to like this one. It's really kind of a special project for me. So we'll look for that one coming soon. We'll have cover and advanced information released over on the Patreon. I release a lot of that over on the Patreon before anywhere else. So again, check out the patreon.com/DARobertsAuthor for short stories that are already available. Demons Part 1 and another one that I cannot remember what the title of it is, but it's a Dogman story set here in Missouri. So I hope you guys will check it out.
And that's a good one.
I'm pretty happy with that one. Some of those short stories they're not typical short stories. Most short stories are 5,000 to 6,000 words. These are 15,000 to 20,000. They're longer short stories, what kind of novellas. So they're unpublished. They're over there. Once I've got a few more done, I'm going to release them as a compilation of shorter stories. But right now they're not available anywhere else. You can find them over there. So I hope you guys have checked that out. Hope you guys will be back with us on Wednesday night. I haven't finalized the show for that, so I haven't really announced what it's going to be yet. But that should be coming tomorrow, maybe Monday. So look for the announcement of the new show. Hope you guys will join us then. We've had an awesome time tonight. Again, big thank you to Miss Naoma. Robbie, thank you for hanging out with me.
You're welcome,
I'll have to holler at Anthony later and see how he's doing. And I'm also going to check on Doc and see how he's feeling. So, keep Doc and Miss Lanita in your prayers. Pat Kennedy, who's also a member of the channel here, she's having some health issues, so keep her in your prayers as well. So thank you, folks, for hanging out with us. Thank you guys for all the amazing things, the comments and the support and the love that you guys have shown us over the years. We're very close to hitting 4,000 subscribers on the channel, like within spitting distance. And when we hit 5,000, it's going to be a big milestone. At 5,000, I think we're going to do a pretty good giveaway. So look for some cool swag to be given away at the 5,000 mark. So again, thank you guys for being here. We hope you guys will join us on Wednesday night. I hope you guys had a good time. I hope you guys had as much fun as we did, and we will see you guys on Wednesday night. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAX Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.